I still hear the sound of the metal crushing. It's a sound that wakes me up at night, even a whole year later. For 12 months, I've kept this photo hidden on my phone because looking at it made me feel like I couldn't breathe. People see us smiling on Instagram and they think, oh, Jill and Derick are doing great, but they don't know that on February 7th, we almost lost everything. They don't know about the creeps from the back seat or the feeling of being trapped inside a car that was upside down. Today, I'm finally ready to show you the wreckage. I'm ready to tell you how we survived the day that should have been our last. This isn't just a story about a car crash. It's a story about the miracle that kept my 3 boys alive. And it's the reason I hug them a little tighter every single morning. It started like any other Tuesday. The morning was chaotic, trying to get the boys ready and out the door. I remember feeling stressed about being 5 minutes late. If I had known what was waiting for us down the road, I would have stopped time right there in the kitchen. I would have held Freddie a little longer while he was eating his breakfast. We piled into the car, Derick driving, me in the passenger seat, and the 3 boys in the back. The radio was playing. The kids were arguing about something silly, like whose turn it was to pick a song. It was so normal. That's the thing that haunts me the most, how quickly normal can turn into a nightmare. We were laughing about something Derick said, and I looked out the window at the gray sky. I didn't have a single bad feeling. I didn't have a premonition. I just thought we were going to run errands and come home for lunch. I wish I could go back to that version of Jill, the one who didn't know the sound of a life-altering impact. I don't remember seeing the other car coming. All I remember is the sound. It was a deafening crunch of metal that sounded like a bomb going off right next to my ear. The world started spinning. I remember gripping the handle of the door so hard my knuckles turned white. I saw the sky, then the pavement, then the sky again. We were rolling. In those split seconds, time didn't just slow down, it stopped. My entire life didn't flash before my eyes, but my children's faces did. I thought, this is it. We are dying. I braced myself for the final hit, closing my eyes and screaming Jesus' name. When the car finally stopped moving, the silence was heavier than the noise. For a second, I didn't know if we were alive or dead. The smell of smoke and airbags filled the car instantly. I tried to open my eyes, but everything was blurry. My first thought wasn't pain, it was panic. Are the boys okay? The scream that tore out of my throat was something primal. I swear you, Sam! Fredy. I tried to turn around, but I couldn't move. The seatbelt had locked tight against my chest, and I realized we were upside down. The blood rushed to my head, and I felt broken glass falling into my hair. Then I heard it, the most beautiful sound in the world. Crying. Freddie was wailing from his car seat. He was scared, but he was alive. Then Sam started crying, and finally, Israel's shaky voice said, Mom, Dad? Relief washed over me so hard it made me dizzy. But then the fear set in again. We were trapped. The doors were crushed in. I could see Derick next to me, bleeding from his head, trying to reach for my hand. Jill, stay calm, he whispered, but I could hear the terror in his own voice. We couldn't get out. We just had to hang there, suspended in our wrecked car, and praying that help would come before anything else happened. I remember hearing the sirens before I saw them. It started as a faint wail in the distance, and I just closed my eyes and prayed, please hurry. Being trapped in that crushed metal felt like being in a coffin. I was terrified that the car might catch fire or that another car would hit us. When the first firefighter looked through the shattered window, his face was so serious. He didn't smile. He just yelled, "We have kids in here." Get the jaws? That phrase, get the jaws, sent a shiver down my spine. They had to cut the door off to get to us. I remember the loud grinding noise of the metal being torn apart. It was deafening. I just kept talking to the boys, trying to keep my voice steady even though I was shaking uncontrollably. It's okay. Guys, the helpers are here. Look for the fire truck. When they finally pulled me out and the cold air hit my face, I collapsed. My legs just wouldn't hold me. I wasn't just injured, I was in shock. They wanted to put Derick in one ambulance and me and the boys in another. I panicked. I grabbed Derick's shirt and told them, "No, please don't separate us." I needed to see him. I needed to know he was breathing. But they insisted because of his head injury. Watching the doors close on him was one of the scariest moments of my life. The ride to the hospital was a blur of lights and noises. I was strapped to a backboard with a neck brace on, so I couldn't turn my head to look at Israel or Sam. I just had to listen to the paramedics working on them. Check his pupils. Is his stomach tender? Every question they asked made my heart stop. I was lying there staring at the ceiling of the ambulance, just begging God to let them be okay. I didn't care about my own pain. I would have taken every single injury if it meant my boys wouldn't have a scratch. The emergency room was chaos. As soon as they wheeled us in, we were surrounded by doctors and nurses. They started cutting my clothes off to check for injuries. The lights were so bright and the noise was overwhelming. I could hear Freddie crying in the next bay, and it took everything in me not to rip the IVs out of my arm and run to him. They were worried about internal bleeding because of where the seatbelt had dug into my stomach. I remember the doctor pressing on my abdomen and asking, "Does this hurt? Does this hurt?" I was so scared. I kept thinking, what if I have bleeding I can't see? What if I go to sleep and don't wake up? They wheeled me away for a CT scan, and being alone in that machine with the loud clanking noises brought me right back to the crash. I just closed my eyes and recited Psalm 23 over and over again until they pulled me out. The hardest phone call I've ever had to make was to my mom. The nurse handed me my phone. The screen was cracked from the wreck, and I dialed her number with shaking hands. When she answered with her cheerful hello, I just burst into tears. I couldn't even speak. Finally, I choked out, "Mom, we were in a wreck. It's bad." I heard her gasp, and then the line went quiet for a second. I told her we were alive, but that the car was gone and we were all hurt. Hearing my mom's voice crack on the other end, it broke me. She started praying right then and then there on the phone, even though things have been complicated between us. In that moment, I just needed my mom. I needed to hear her tell me that everything was going to be all right. And she did. She stayed on the phone with me until the doctors came back in. It wasn't until a few hours later, when things had calmed down, that Derick showed me the picture. A bystander had sent it to him. When he turned the phone around and I saw our car, I literally stopped breathing. It was completely crushed. The roof was caved in, the windows were gone, and the whole vehicle looked like a crumpled piece of paper. I looked at that photo, and then I looked at my boys sitting on the hospital bed, eating popsicles. It didn't make sense. By all laws of physics, we shouldn't have walked away from that. The firefighter had told Derick, I've pulled bodies out of wrecks that looked better than this. That was the moment the reality hit me. We didn't just survive an accident, we survived a miracle. God must have had angels holding up that roof, because there is no other explanation for why we are still here. Walking back into our house that evening felt surreal. The toys were still on the floor where the boys had left them. The breakfast dishes were still in the sink. It looked exactly the same, but we were completely different people. I remember standing in the living room, still smelling like airbag smoke and hospital antiseptic, and just weeping. I looked at the clock on the stove. It had only been a few hours, but it felt like a lifetime had passed. We huddled together on the couch, Derick, me, and the boys, and we didn't turn on the TV. We didn't talk much. We just sat there holding onto each other, terrified to let go. I kept touching their faces, counting their fingers, making sure they were really there. That night, I didn't put them in their own beds. We made a giant pallet on the floor in our room because I couldn't bear the thought of them being out of my sight for even a second. The house felt fragile, like the walls could collapse at any moment, just like our car did. The next morning, the adrenaline wore off and the pain set in. I couldn't move my neck. My entire body felt like it had been beaten with a baseball bat. I remember looking in the mirror and seeing the seatbelt bruises across my chest, turning these angry shades of purple and black. The neck brace was suffocating. I had to wear it for weeks, and it made doing simple things like washing my hair or picking up Freddie almost impossible. Derick was hurting too. His back was in bad shape, but he tried so hard to help me. We were both hobbling around the house, taking turns icing our injuries and managing the pain medication. Every time I laughed or coughed, my ribs screamed. It was a constant physical reminder of the violence of the crash. I felt trapped in my own body, frustrated that I couldn't be the mom I wanted to be because I was so broken. But the physical pain was nothing compared to watching my boys suffer emotionally. Israel and Sam started having nightmares almost immediately. They would wake up screaming about the loud noise or falling. Freddie, who was too young to explain it, just became terrified of his car seat every time we had to go somewhere, even just to the doctor. It was a battle. As soon as I clicked the buckle, Freddie would start hyperventilating. It broke my heart. I knew exactly how he felt because I felt it too. We had to do a lot of processing with them. We drew pictures. We talked about how the car did its job to protect us, and we prayed a lot. Seeing the fear in their eyes was the hardest part of the recovery. Scars on my skin can heal, but I worried that the scars on their little hearts would last forever. For the first month, I couldn't drive. I couldn't even sit in the front seat without having a panic attack. The first time I tried to drive again, I only made it to the end of our street before I had to pull over. My hands were shaking so bad I couldn't grip the wheel. Every car that passed us looked like a threat. If I saw someone braking too late or swerving a little, my heart would pound out of my chest. I felt like I was holding my breath the entire time I was on the road. Derick had to do almost all the driving for a while, and even then, I was a nervous wreck in the passenger seat, constantly gasping or grabbing the dashboard. I felt weak. I felt silly. But the trauma of that impact had rewired my brain to see danger everywhere. It took months of therapy and baby steps just to feel safe going to the grocery store again. People have asked why we waited a whole year to share this. In the world of social media, everyone expects you to post everything as it happens. But this was too big and too personal to share with strangers. I didn't want comments. I didn't want advice. I didn't want headlines. We needed to heal in private. I needed to focus on my boys and my husband without worrying about what the internet thought of my bruised face or my wrecked car. It felt like a sacred struggle. We wanted to process the why and the how with God before we processed it with the public. Keeping it a secret wasn't about hiding the truth. It was about protecting our peace while we were piecing our lives back together. Now that we are on the other side, I feel strong enough to share it. But back then, I was just trying to survive the day. Dealing with the aftermath of a wreck isn't just emotional, it's painfully practical. While we were trying to heal, the bills started rolling in. The ambulance ride, the ER visit, the CT scans, it all adds up so fast. And then there was the car. We found out pretty quickly that our vehicle was a total loss. Dealing with insurance companies while you're recovering from a concussion is a nightmare. We had to figure out how to replace our primary family car when we weren't prepared for a car payment. It was just another layer of stress on top of the trauma. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a stack of paperwork and just feeling overwhelmed. But Derick reminded me, Jill, these are just things. Money is just paper. We can replace a car, but we couldn't have replaced you. He was right. But the financial strain was a heavy cloud over our recovery for a long time. I don't give Derick enough credit. He was in that car too. He was bleeding too. But from the second we crashed, his only focus was on me and the boys. He pushed through his own pain to carry the laundry baskets when I couldn't lift them. He drove us to therapy appointments even when his back was killing him. I watched him hold our family together when I was falling apart. There were nights when I would wake up crying from a nightmare and he would just hold me until I fell back asleep. He never complained. He never said, I'm hurting too. He just served us. This accident showed me a side of my husband that I had never seen before, a warrior who protects his family at all costs. I fell in love with him all over again in those weeks of recovery. But before the accident, I used to get annoyed by the boring days. The laundry, the dishes, the noise, it felt like a chore. But after almost losing everything, boring became my favorite word. Now, when I hear the boys fighting over a toy, I don't get mad. I thank God that they are here to fight. When I see a pile of dirty dishes, I thank God that we had food to eat and a table to sit at. The crash stripped away all my entitlement. It taught me that every single breath is a gift that we didn't earn. I started taking pictures of the most random things, sunset, a cup of coffee, the boys' muddy shoes by the door, because I realized how quickly it could all be taken away. Gratitude became my medicine. February 7th, the date was looming over us like a dark cloud all month. I was so afraid of how I would feel when the 1-year mark arrived. Would I have a panic attack? Would the boys be scared? But when the day came, we decided to reclaim it. We didn't stay home and hide. We took the boys out for ice cream. We went to the park. We celebrated Life Day. We talked about the accident, yes, but we focused on the survival, not the crash. It was emotional, but it was also joyful. We realized that the anniversary wasn't a reminder of death. It was a reminder that God wasn't done with us yet. We made it a year. We are still here. People ask me if I asked God why. Why did this happen to us? And honestly, I did. But the more I look at the photos of that wrecked car, the more my question changes to how did that roof not collapse on us? How did the glass not cut us deeper? I truly believe there were angels in that car with us. There is a peace that passes all understanding. We felt it in the chaos. God protected my children in a way that a car seat never could. This accident didn't shake my faith. It solidified it. I know that God is real because I am looking at 3 little miracles running around my living room who shouldn't be here. If I can tell you one thing, mothers, it's this: don't leave the house mad. Don't let the last thing you say to your kids be a correction or a complaint. That morning, I was stressed about being late. I regret that stress so much. Hug your babies, kiss your husband, say I love you even when you're rushing out the door. You never know when a normal Tuesday will turn into the day that changes everything. Life is so much more fragile than we think. Hold it gently, love loudly. Don't wait for a tragedy to teach you how precious this life really is. We are moving forward. The scars are fading, both on our bodies and in our hearts. I'm driving again, cautiously, but I'm doing it. The boys are sleeping through the night. We are healing. Sharing this story is the final step of my recovery. I'm not hiding the wreck anymore. I'm owning it. It's part of our story, but it's not the end of our story. We are the Dillards. We are survivors, and we are going to live every single day we have been given to the fullest. Thank you for praying for us, even when you didn't know what we were going through. We felt it. We love you all.